Hello and welcome to another Break for Assault unboxing video. I'm Lee Parnell, recording from somewhere in the south of England, and today we'll be taking a look at the new Clash of Steel German vs British starter set. But what is Clash of Steel, I hear you say? Well, if you somehow missed the marketing that Battlefront have been putting out of late, Clash of Steel is a new tank-on-tank combat game marketed by Gale Force 9 rather than Battlefront itself. The game focuses purely on tanks with no artillery or infantry aspect or aircraft, but it is still based on the Flames of War rule set, albeit with some major changes in terms of how morale is worked out and how the missions operate. We'll go into that in some more detail. Rather than being set during World War II or the 1980s for Team Yankee, this game is set immediately after an alternative World War II, with the war ending in 1944 with the German surrender after the assassination of Hitler. It then sets up for Operation Unthinkable style encounter with America and Britain and a resurgent Germany against the Soviet Union. There's no real explanation as to why it's only tank on tank in this game, or why all of a sudden the Germans reverse the British. That's kind of left up for the players to decide. But it gives a little bit of explanation as to why we're seeing stuff like the Tortoise, Centurion, Mark 1s and Mark 3s and the like on the battlefield. To some extent, this is really giving Battlefront the chance to reuse a lot of the models from the World of Tanks game. I mean, it's self-containing it, so it's kept away from the historical stuff in the actual Flames of War game. But of course, this is an unboxing video, so let's open the box and see what's inside. Now, this is a much deeper box than most two-player starters, and you'll see why in a minute. Took the liberty of already cutting the plastic film, make it easier to take off, though it is tweaked. And here you can see it is full of Germans and British. So what we're going to do is we'll look at the Germans first, it was on top, and then we'll take a look at the British tanks. So first up the Germans, we have King Tiger sprue, two of those. Still a hefty tank in this game, good front armour, good anti-tank, gets most things to go face. Tiger 1, that's up next. Yeah, so two Tiger 1s in this box. Again, a bit of a classic, really showing its age now. Front armor 9, anti-tank 14 is not where we want to be, but the side armor's okay. Of course, talking about front armor 9, anti-tank 14, we also have 4 Panzer 470s. Now these are a bit weird, a bit harsh. They are a support choice rather than a core choice, so count towards your force in terms of certain aspects. And finally, having a bit of rummage around because for some reason it's buried at the bottom, we have the mouse. So again, nice kit here. We'll do a build in a minute. Look at the Brits first. Generally, you gotta have actually a HQ tank in this game. Okay, well, in the British box, we start off with the Centurion kit. Obviously, I covered this in detail previously on the previous video, but you get 4 of those, enough for a HQ and then a platoon of 3. Everything in the British force comes in threes, the exception being the Tortoise and the Centurion. I think you get 2 of as well. Next up, we get the lovely Comet, nice little fast tank, decent anti-tank pop side armour. In my game versus Eddie, I was running around trying to shoot King Tigers in the side. Fishing for ones versus a Mouso. So if you want to shoot a mouse in the side, what you really need is a Tortoise. And we've got 2 of these. Front armour is hilariously high, I think it's 21. 8 tanks, only 18 though, which is a little bit... In this game, 8 tanks is a little bit disappointing. Anyway, that's the miniatures. As you can see, decent selection there. Let's have a look at the next part of the box. Okay, so you get some command sprues and some transfers, but we really want to look at his books, so I'm going to tear this apart like an absolute savage. In here, we have a few books and the counters. Let's just get this siphon off. So we have a little pamphlet that goes over the core rules, plus a fuller rule book. A4 format compared to the A5, which we've kind of gotten used to with the Flames of War Team Yankee. You then get 2 army books, one for the Germans and one for the British. Similarly, you then get instructions both for the Germans and the British, sort of explained view diagram, but in stages. And then we have the counters. We'll look at this in slightly more detail in a second, but effectively you get sort of your bell markers plus the objectives. And then the cards. We're going to look at the cards in more detail now. So in the cards we have basically the mission setup cards, tell you the deployment areas where the objectives are. Objectives are always in neutral territory. Tactics cards are dealt out at the start of each turn. Give you you can use them in your turn to give you abilities like rerolling morale, dumping off objectives, changing the objectives, which is interesting as well. Second part of the setup are the actual. There we are. Second part of the setup is the actual mission rules. So they'll tell you how long the game lasts, if there are reserves, if there are ambushes. And again, these are dealt separately to the actual setup, so you get some interesting combinations. The smaller cards sit on top of the objective. Don't tear a card. Basically, deal these out onto your 1, 2, 3 objective, and then turn over at the start of the turn corresponding to the number of the objective. So, objective 1, turn 1. Objective 2, turn 2. Finally, unit cards, pretty much the same format as the actual Flames War and Team Yankee ones. One nice little thing is a turn counter. Victory point counter. You get 1 marked attacker, 1 marked defender, and it basically counts up in increments of 1 to 10, and then 10 to, optimistically, I think it's 100. Quite well built. Little plastic things went together, they hold it together relatively well. I think one of them was a bit of a pain. But it's definitely a right way and a wrong way of putting the dials in, and if you actually pay attention to what it's trying to tell you, it does tell you which way to go in. If you're a complete muppet like me and gets too excited and starts assembling it with complete abandon, you'll realise it quickly that you've messed up. Looking at the objective, you'll see these are circular, bigger than a sort of standard Flames of War objective. But it's still within 4 inches of it to actually contest it or hold it. It just means there's a larger beaten zone around it effectively. As I said, each are numbered. The game will tell you when number 1 goes, number 2 goes, number 3 goes. And the numbers are important because we put objectives on and they'll give special rules. Like in our game versus Eddie, there was low ground, so everything within 4 inches of the objective was always concealed, which is great when there's a mouse sitting there and you want to get the side armour. Of course, they pointed out that's probably a reason why it is low ground. The mouse just crushed everything down. Right, so let's take a look at the actual playing a mission. First things first, you draw yourself a mission setup card. Sorry about the autofocus, I've got to turn it off in this bit. Here we had central attack, so you have 2 objectives, tells you where to place them, where the attack and defender deployment zones are, and if your mission card tells you to have scatter reserves, it tells you where they come on from. Tournament mission rules, next you draw one of those cards. This will tell you a turn limit, so this one's 7 rounds, and if you have reserves, in this case immediate reserves. The number in the circle I think is just to tell you this is card number 2. They seem to go up sequentially on the actual cards themselves. Next up we get the objective cards. So as you can see here we've got 1, we've got 2. They go down face down. At the start of turn 1, I'm just going to put a little dice out to say it's turn 1 because that's what you do. There you go. You turn it over. In this case, we have a forced retreat. The game is 1 turn shorter, so it's only 7 rounds. And then when we get to turn 2, we turn the other one over, and we get urgent. So now we have another set of parameters here. So you take the card until the end of turn 5. So we get extra points, but only up until then. Between having different layouts, different mission rules, and then different objective effects, with some having auras, some having different point scoring factors, the missions are going to play very differently each time, and you have to think on your feet, especially when objectives go live, and change the game plan by suddenly emphasising the central objective or the far left objective. In my game versus Eddie, when we tried this out, it worked very well. I think it actually mixed the game up. We sort of had to think on our feet as to what objectives were doing, and then when Eddie played a card which took the objective off, that was a kind of a shock to me because my entire game plan was built around holding that objective. You can't afford to get too set in what you're thinking, I think. It's fair to say. Anyway, let's take a look at the new models and how we assemble them, because they are quite interesting how they go together, especially the tracks. So I've clipped out all the parts of the Tortoise here. I'm going to follow instructions for this assembly, which I know is unusual for me. I'm not going to try and improvise. And the instructions say to start with the base plate. So we're just going to put on double polystyrene cement. Sorry, make sure it's in the video league. That's the whole point of this. Put it on here. Now, one of the interesting things straight away to point out is you can see here the tracks are part of the actual construction, which I found quite interesting. Obviously, normally with a Battlefront kit, we tend to think of the tracks as coming on from the side, like say the Panzer IV, the Shermans, Comets. They have a discrete track assembly. This is almost Plastic Soldier Company-esque in having a multi-part track, albeit not as complex as early ones tend to be. We're next going to fit on the top plate. Just as always, let's do a quick dry fit to make sure we know what we're doing. And you can see here it's going to mate up with the actual side of the track unit below, like that. And it doesn't look too bad. So we're going to put a little bit of glue on this face here. Probably a little bit, just a little scraping on there. Remember, you don't want to put too much polystyrene, like I've just done there, too much polystyrene cement on, because it'll only make a mess. There's not a lot supporting the back of it actually, which is a bit weird how they're going across the assembly here. I guess the next stage where we put on the side plates will hopefully remedy that. So again, let's do a quick dry fit. So these are going to come on here. Yes, and then we'll just tuck everything down like that to get everything secure again. And you can see here that puts on your road wheels and the like. Oh, yeah, like I said, a bit of a weird construction thing. It doesn't seem to support it very well to start off with. You can see here we've got these nice faces here. We can get some glue on just to hold it in place. But let's go do another quick test fit just to make sure. Yeah. So we're going to put a little line of glue along here. Little line of glue here. And a little bit of glue here. And we're going to go here. And we're going to put it on. Now, one thing I'm not a huge fan of, and this is really personal preference, is the fact it's got all the spare linkages moulded on. It means that every single Tortoise you get in a tabletop is going to have the same spare links already on the tank. And yes, you could probably get a knife and cut them down, but it's going to leave marks. It never looks quite as good as having it as an optional piece. It feels like these kits, I'm not going to say dumbed down. Dumbed down is completely the wrong intention. It sounds a bit negative. But it's certainly designed to be slightly quicker and easier to assemble, while still not being kind of like, you know, a Vesda pushed together kind of affair. It's a nice compromise. I mean, sure, I like my kits a little bit more fiddly, a little bit more options, but that's because I had a misspent, I'm just slightly old enough to have a misspent youth building 172 chieftain tanks and that kind of thing. Not everyone's going to have that, and that's fine. It's a Broadchurch wargaming. Okay, let's need to tuck that in a bit more. There you are. So that's both side plates on. You can see now the Tortoise is very much taking shape, ready to go onto the ranges of Kukubri. I mean the gaming table. But I'm just going to put a little bit more glue in here because it doesn't seem to be going particularly secure. Oh, excuse me. Guitar just had dinner. This is a bit where if I had Eddie doing these, he did it all out, but I've got to do this myself. Okay, so that's the next side plate on. Now we put on the rear plate. Again, the rear plate has the tracks built on. Sorry, put it the right way up. You can see the track tops on here. That's good. Clip in like that. And we'll just go to put it in place. Again, nothing terribly out of the ordinary here, apart from the fact, let's say, the track's part of the assembly, which is interesting. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, but I think the proof is going to be very much in the pudding. So I'm like, it's like, how do you get the gap? But you can see there is a gap. Even from the front, yeah, it kind of butts straight up, but I think there is a bit of overlap in reality. So again, not terribly out of the picture, as it were. Let's get a good squeeze. Okay, it now suggests to put on the mantlet at the front. Again, big boy mantlet here. I'm just going to quickly tidy up a little nib. I got those listen to the podcast, episode 104 and episode 105. Eddie was trying to sell me on expensive 20 quid Tamiya clippers, and he succeeded, which is why he is a better salesman than I am. Much to Duncan's disgust, who thinks I'm a sellout. But then again, Duncan's been thinking that ever since I started doing Team Yankee Australians. So, you know, at least I'm consistently a sellout. Okay, so that's the money on there. We also have the AA little turret. Quite an interesting little thing here. Two Besser machine guns. A little little turret. I suspect you could probably magnetize that, but you don't really need to. It'll just be more for bragging rights, I guess. I'm not going to magnetize it, but there's a little alignment tab here which makes me think it's probably going to go in just one direction, but I can't see a corresponding feature on the inside here, which, you know, interesting. On the other hand, you can see alignment features here for the commander's hatch, and that does have the corresponding alignment feature on here. So clearly that was intended to have that as a feature. Oh. That's a very big nib there. That cleans up very well. So I'm trying something out different out of the camera here. I'm going for more of a top-down affair. So please let me know in the comments if you think this works better, or if you prefer the over-the-shoulder look I was trying to do in the first few videos. Let's go this one here. See, I'm going to be honest here, I am actually slightly out of sequence. You only meant to do the AA hatch, and then you're going to go here and do the back plate. So interestingly, the engine deck is a separate part. Now, I suspect that's driven by the requirements of moulding, but it's one of these things I think Battlefront, certainly on the Sherman kits, probably should have done from the start, because it lets you do a lot more with common hull types in the Sherman, but having different engine decks to correspond to, you know, the diesel engine, the original Wright engine, the later Ford V8 engine, and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, that goes on there. Like I say, when I make it a separate part, you get all that lovely detail on the back deck. Make sure everything's all lining up. I think it's all going quite well. Okay, next up, we're going to put on the tracks. Presuming the fishtail is heading towards the back. I'm going to presume it's, yeah, okay. Nope, okay, that looks about right. Again, you get this nice double row wheels. Bit glue there, bit glue there. Dab, 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 dab. So many road wheels. I mean, you think a modern tank has like something like a Abrams has like 7 row wheels. I guess this thing with 8 isn't too far off. and obviously it's a much heavier tank. I think somewhere in the order of 80 tons. I'll just look it up, or I'm going to deal with it in the history section. I always do at the start on these things, so you know. It's heavier than a Challenger 2, even with the full Megatron theatre entry kit on. When you consider a Challenger 2 is quite a hefty piece of kit, that's impressive. Could it stop the same sort of rounds as a Chieftain, as a Challenger? Probably not. Okay, I think that's okay. So it's possible to put these tracks on the wrong way, but you will notice it. And once you get it the right way, it does fit on much nicer. Okay. Do another little prod and make sure everything's settling down. I think I might just get a peg on there in a second just to keep it down. Okay, next up we have the whole machine gun. Again, another little piece of 30mm. 30mm? Blimey, that's being generous, was it? No, sorry, it is a 792. It's a weird caliber, at least by standards of British tanks. Pretty much unique, but it was a rimless cartridge compared to the rimmed 303 rounds that you say using the Enfield. One thing interesting I find about a Tortoise is it has this weird little muzzle brake like that, little prongs to it. Okay, glue in there, pop that in. Yeah, again, just that rear deck, just I think maybe like that. I think I'm just being overly fixated on it. Okay, and one last little cool bit is this little jerry can, optional extra, that pops on the back, should you so wish. They show it going on the back. There. So put a bit of glue on. And there we have one rather spiffy little Tortoise. Again, do I like the fact these things are in the game? I mean, it makes sense for Operation Unthinkable. They were around. And if you could do it, you might as well make a nice looking kit for it. Can't argue with that. I've flipped all the parts of the mouse off here, and you can see it's presented in a nice sort of dark yellow colour. I guess to allow for the fact people don't always paint their models. We are following the instructions again, and the instructions suggest starting with the lower hull and placing the front and back plates on. One thing to note straight away is that the lower hull has an F and a B for front and back, because it looks almost the same but not quite. Okay, this bit goes on first at the front. Just go do a quick dry fit, quick little tidy up, because it's a little bit angled sometimes, it's hard to get the cutters aligned, but hey, it takes seconds to tidy it up and ensure we get a nice fit. That goes on like that. He says, taking the polystyrene cement lid out his mouth. And then the back hole is going to go on here. Again, do a quick dry fit, make sure it's clean. Well, it's going to clean up a bit of the track. Just where we're drawing onto the sprue. Get those off. Okay. And again, let's go put a little bit of glue on. And put that to one side, because next up it's just building a turret. Obviously the turret is an absolute unit on the mouse. It's same turret as the E100 if I recall correctly, or very similar. In fact, I think it's one of those things where they took the E100 turret, stuck it on top of the mouse and cut it off to Moscow. So I'm not even sure it was even the turret it's meant to have in the first place. But it's big because it's got to house a 128mm, a coaxial 7.5mm, which is the same gun as on the Panther, and the 128 is the same on the Jagdtiger, and then still have room for a coaxial machine gun, just in case the infantry haven't run away screaming by the time they see this thing. Tie boats. Get a nice rounded shape to it. As always, comes the options of magnets or pegs. I prefer magnets because magnets, how do they work? Obviously other people will vary. And then my co-hosts always prefer going with pegs. Snigger. Okay. I think I'll put it on backwards. Because I'm a muppet and not quite looking at the instructions, so I'm doing this. Okay, yeah, so the open bit is at the front. That's why it didn't look quite right. Thankfully, it's all on the side, so I can get away with that. No one would know, except for I'm recording this. Okay, next up, we put on the absolute huge mantle for the gun, or mantlet, sorry. Mantle. I should really look up these words before I start saying them, shouldn't I? Make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. But hey, the fact is I don't. I'm an aircraft expert, and aircraft don't generally have mantles. Not even the flying tanks. We make sure the half moon is at the top on this one. Otherwise, we'll have an upside down gun. Because when we come to put this on later, that will line up, coax gun and the like. Okay, and now this goes to one side. Just go put a bit more glue in there. Put in the edges. Yeah, so I'm going to put the glue in the edges here. That seems to like it better than the centre. The centre seems to be a bit recessed. Okay, nuances as always. Right, let's put it there. Okay, now we are going to put the side plates on. So we're going like that. You can see how they line up there. So we get these interlevered track pairings, because oh my god, did the Germans love doing that, even though it's an absolute nightmare to change the track. Right, so we're going to put some glue on the inside here, on the inside here, and then on each of these little tabs here. And we're going to get this, which is handily, I now see marked R for right. And put that on. Yep, there you go. Just nudge it around till it clips in. And we get that. And then we do the same with the one Gaboom's marked L for left. Not L for Lee. No one loves Lee. No one's going to mark their tanks L for Lee. Nobody loves Zafros. Okay, put this on here. There you go. Starting to take shape there. So we can see our B is on our B and our F is on our F. Hadn't noticed it the first time. Just guessed. Got away with it. Story of my career. Okay, we're now going to put that to one side again to dry. And we're going to go back to the turret. The turret's going to have, like I say, it's a rather fearsome 125mm. This again, just do a quick little bit of tidy up. Make sure the mould lines are suppressed. And little sprue joints. Dry fit. Looks tasty. And when you think about it, 125mm, same as a Russian tank these days, so kind of ahead of the times in that respect. But obviously rifled rather than smoothbore. And then we have two options on the turret. We can have commander's hatch open or commander's hatch closed. I always tend to default to command hatch open because it's nice to have the guy sticking out his out. But let's face it, generally you'd be getting your head low. But let's just as a little circle aside, we're talking about this. One of the things the Germans quickly worked out was not to have the hatch go up, have it go lay down. Otherwise, the hatch up. Anti-tank gunners tend to aim for it, and if you get hit there, and obviously it sends a whole bunch of high velocity nastiness down to the open turret. What I'm not sure is if I actually have to push this down to get a secure fit. Box art, happy. Not helpful, medium box art. Right, given that is flat, it must go down flush, surely. Right, so as you can see, there's one slight gap in the instructions. It seems to suggest it goes all the way down. Ka-funk. There you go. Press it all the way down. It looks right. Okay. I'm not going to put the peg on because I'm going to magnetise this later because I like magnets. Okay, next we're going to put the whole top on. Quick try fit. What's going to happen is all these little light tabs are going to pop in like that. There we go. Happy days. Get a nice generous glue tab all the way along the top here. Try not to put too much in because otherwise it'll just all splosh out and ruin the model. Yeah, that's going quite nicely. I'm now going to put the tracks on. So again, pop this over. And again, by the looks of it, there is only one way these can go on. Let's go look right. So, just double check a sec. Interesting. I wasn't expect. I suppose it's just low. It's just out of view, so probably get away with it. Again, limitations of how far along you can go before you start hitting what the mold tool can do. Because obviously with a metal tool, you are limited in how much you can play around with undercuts. In fact, you can't have undercuts without having very expensive tools where bits move in and out. So that's good go on there. That's good go on there. Okay, so I think I can safely say the actual tracks go together quite nicely on these new way of doing it. They're not the nightmare of, say, the early PSC kits, which are a bit too complex for their own good. Even if it did look rather nice, because it had plenty of detail on the underside track. But how often do you see the underside of the track? And then we're going to put... Oh, sorry, just knocked them. One thing I do need to work on is a better installation for this. Still not quite entirely happy with the camera positioning. So we're going to put on the auxiliary fuel tank next. That's going to go. Yeah. Feels like let's try and line this up. Okay, so that little thing is on the top. which suggests it's going there. Just dry fit, trying to do a dry fit, and just well, it doesn't seem to have a locating feature, I think. What's going to be is these rounded bits here are going to line up with here. I think the only locating feature is that this little slightly enlarged tab here. Okay. And there we have it. One beast of a super heavy tank. And again, if you're going to do a mouse model, do a nice mouse model. And safe to say, this is a nice mouse model. There you go. Right, let's do the wash up. Followers of the podcast will no doubt recall I've been somewhat unenthusiastic about Clash of Steel. To my mind, the beauty of Flames of War is the fact it does combined arms relatively well, with the artillery and the infantry and the tanks all working together to achieve the objective. And by taking away the artillery and the assaults or the infantry, it somehow felt like you go water down the game and take away a lot of its beauty. Taking Clash of Steel on its own, though, it actually worked remarkably well. Certainly in our debrief after our game, Eddie was keen to point out that it worked a lot better as an avenue of teaching his nephew, for example. And obviously both me and Eddie were old hands at Flames of War, but we still managed to get quite a lot of enjoyment out of just having a swirling tank battle. In some ways, the actual fielding of a late Operation Unthinkable style thing isn't really doing the game its best service. It'd be interesting to play this, for example, with hordes of Stuarts versus Panzer IIIs doing sort of like the Operation Crusader style operations in the early war desert, or doing the swirling tank battles of the Kursk operations, obviously with Russians versus Germans. Whereas I think a lot of people just get their backs up straight away because of the actual nature of having, effectively, people call them fancy tanks, but obviously these things were cut metal, but a lot of them never went beyond their prototype stage. The Tortoise, I think about 6 of them went to Germany for field trials, for example. The Mouse is 2 examples, I think only one of which was actually complete to any degree before the end of the war. But once you peel that back and sort of focus on the mechanism of the game, the actual dynamic of the sort of procedurally generated missions, to use a computer software sort of focus, combined with the actual tactics cards and the unpredictability of the actual objective cards, made for an interesting game. You had to think on your feet. You couldn't just go in with a set plan and stick to set plan. You had to be ready to deal with changes. In my game versus Eddie, I wasn't to some degree. I went for the flanks, figuring he'd go door straight down the middle with the mouse. And that worked to a degree, but by taking my objective away from me under my feet, effectively by playing a card, that sort of really broke my flow. In a way, I was surprised the game came down to a point difference in the end, just by plugging away and taking out Eddie's units, leaving just one unit standing. And that sort of is interesting dynamic. And I want to try and take that and see how it works with Flames of War and Team Yankee. I mean, I love the idea of having a unit of helicopters swoop down on one of the neutral objectives. There doesn't seem to be anything in the way the rules are written to preclude that. Everything talks about a unit. Occasionally it talks about a tank. I think in general just say a tank is a unit and then apply the rules to the unit in the area. It'd be really interesting to try that. I mean, similarly, a Team Yankee version of this game would be really interesting. Having Abrams and T-80s just going up against each other and a big swirling melee, that kind of thing. Everything has advanced stabilizers. Just imagine the sweep the game would have to it. So, I mean, it was interesting how my opinion was turned around. I mean, some of this is going to be just being carried along by Eddie's boundless enthusiasm for all things wargaming. He's an absolute sod for making me change my opinion on things just because by raw enthusiasm alone. But I think the game is worth a try. I think it's definitely worth a try if you want to get into Flames of War and Team Yankee. It lets you concentrate on learning the missions. The actual movement and shooting phases. And it's kind of interesting. The actual game is isolated by being Gale Force 9 with sort of no. Oh, and by the way, you now sort of move over to Team Yankee. Eddie probably pointed out that maybe that's deliberate. You don't want people to think this is a feeder series game. They want this to be a game in its own to really attract people in, and that's fair. But I do think there is certainly a lot of potential for people playing this and then introducing artillery and infantry in as they get onto the game. If you've got no interest in Clash of Steel as a thing, then the British starter is still a pretty good deal. 4 Centurions, 3 Comets, 4 Panzer 470s, 2 Tigers, 2 King Tigers, ignoring the Super Heavies. That's a pretty good bundle of things to be throwing around. The price is about 50 quid. 5 Centurions is about 40 quid full price these days. So, if you just want to get some Centurions, I highly recommend this box and then flog the rest on eBay or work with your friends to divvy up the goods. But if you do that, I just really recommend just getting the missions out and giving them a go. Now, there are some criticisms. I wish you could take a Comet HQ and then just have a pure Comet Squadron against a pure Panther 75 Squadron. You can't do that. You have to have the new funky tanks as a HQ, which is kind of forcing me a little bit too much Battlefront. Put me on the rails. Give me some room to manoeuvre. Try and throw you a bone here. It's obviously a targeted thing. This is very much targeted, trying to get people to try the Super Heavies, and that's fine. It's fine. Because at least the Super Heavy models are nice. Obviously, I've been talking, the Mouse and no doubt by now the Tortoise are doing their little pirouettes on the turntable. And they're good kits. I was highly dubious when I saw how the tracks work. I thought, this ain't going to work, it's going to look terrible. But putting it together, it looked absolutely fine. I was actually surprised. I thought, how can you do it with no undercut on where the track meets the hull? But because of the way it's built, it kind of disappears into the model. It's very well put together. I think Battlefront took a lot of lessons from when they did the early kits like T-34 way back. I don't even remember when that was, but certainly like version 3 days. And they've really come a long way with how they do the plastic kits. They've really learnt a lot of lessons over the years, and it's paying dividends now with the kits they're producing. I think having a mouse kit around just as a little display model is quite fun itself. I'm going to paint up mine. I'm going to try and put the mouse into some red oxide finish with some factory markings on. Maybe a quick spray over of Dunkelgelb, like they try camouflaging it quickly. For Tortoises, I'm thinking probably standard SCC 15, but try and do a Mickey Mouse ear style camo on it, a bit like you see on some people do on the M10s. So a black whole top, or superstructure top, and then having the Mickey Mouse ears come down. I think I've got an idea how I could do that with the masking putty as an overspray. So stay tuned for that. No doubt that'll be appearing on the blog or on the Facebook at some point in the future. So yeah, overall my conclusion, Clash of Steel as a game, good, well worth a try even if you're a veteran player. And I think it's going to have a lot of fun if we can make it work with the actual main Flames and Team Yankee rules. As a box set, value for money, even putting aside you don't like the Tortoise and the Mouse maybe, the box is still worth buying if you can make use of all the bits inside of it. Don't forget the Centurion works in Foan, it works in Nam, it works in Team Yankee. You can build up the Swedish version or the Israeli version now with the extra rules they put out. Ultimately, I think it's a good box to buy, and if you get some value out of the Clash of Steel rules, it's an even better box to buy. So that's my thing. That's my thinking. Obviously, if you disagree, leave your comments below or wherever they are on the app these days, because they keep moving it around. Leave your comments on our Facebook as well. No doubt I'll be posting up there. But please, I think it is, if someone buys it, even if you don't buy it, but someone in your group does, give it a try and just see it, give it well. It's not going to replace Flames of War Team Yankee, but I can see this being a fun little thing that lives alongside of it. Eddie said maybe it's the kind of thing you play if you absolutely table your opponent or get tabled, you can quickly reset and have a quick game of Clash of Steel, and maybe that's something to try in the future. Anyway, thanks for listening. Please do react and leave your comments below. Always nice to hear. Subscribe if you like it. Don't ever feel obliged to. I'm not doing this for a living, but obviously it makes me feel better if you do. I'm Lee Parnell. I'm reporting for Break for Assault, and I'll catch you all soon. Thanks.
I've got a mouse commander.
Yep.
Squeak, squeak, squeak. 4 little